She picked up the phone and said one word. Baby. Not hello. Not hey. Not some carefully constructed opener that someone who has spent 20 years in public life has rehearsed for moments exactly like this. Just baby. Instantly. Like picking up for someone you've already decided everything about. And on the other end of the line, the man who had once stood outside her door with a friendship bracelet and his phone number on it, the man who had gone on a podcast and told the world he wanted to date her, the man who had somehow gotten from that bracelet to that word, he started talking. Fast. Excited. Asking her how she does it. How she can just rehearse a surprise guest appearance for a few minutes backstage and then go perform it live in front of 90,000 people like it's nothing. That phone call is in a documentary now. TaylorSwift put it there herself. She let the world hear it. And the world absolutely lost its mind over what she said at the end of it. But we need to start at the beginning. Because before there was that phone call, before there was any phone call, there was a question. A question that a man named TravisKelce was terrified of answering wrong. How do you get Taylor Swift's number? Not as a fan. Not as a celebrity peer trying to make a connection. As someone who is genuinely, honestly, completely interested in her as a person. As someone who went to her concert with a bracelet and a plan and got turned away at the elevator, and then went home, and then went on a podcast and put his whole heart on the air because he didn't know what else to do. How do you reach the most unreachable person in the world? When you don't want to be another person in her mentions. When you've already made a fool of yourself once in the most public and endearing way possible. When you need to get from zero contact to a first conversation without blowing it. That story, the actual story of how they started talking, is one of the best parts of this whole thing. And Taylor Swift finally told her side of it. On a podcast. On his podcast. With him sitting right there. And what she said was not what anyone expected. Let's go back to July 2023. Because you need to feel the full weight of where this started to understand where it went. TravisKelce goes to the Eras Tour in Kansas City. He has made friendship bracelets, the kind that Taylor's fans trade with each other at every show, a whole culture of handmade things you give to strangers because of a shared love of music. Travis's bracelets have his phone number on them. His plan is to get backstage, find the right person, get down to Taylor's dressing room, introduce himself, and give her the bracelet. It is, by any objective measure, one of the most wonderfully overconfident plans in the history of human romantic endeavor. Not overconfident in a bad way. Overconfident in the way that people are when they are so captivated by someone that their brain simply refuses to process the normal barriers as real. He thinks he knows the woman who runs the elevator. He thinks that's his connection. He thinks he can just figure this out the way he figures out a fourth down conversion. Assess the situation, identify the opening, execute. There is no opening. The elevator woman cannot make this happen. Taylor Swift does not talk to anyone before or after her shows because she has to save her voice for 44 songs. That is not a policy that has exceptions. Not for famous people. Not for charming famous people. Not for charming famous people with friendship bracelets and phone numbers. TravisKelce leaves the stadium the same way he arrived. With the bracelets. Without having met her. He tells the world later that the bracelets didn't leave the stadium that night because he was, but hurt. He uses those exact words. One of the most decorated athletes in the history of the NFL, describing his feelings with the phrase, but hurt, because he couldn't give his phone number to a pop star. But here is the thing. Here is the thing that separates what TravisKelce did next from what every other person who had ever failed at something in public would have done. He talked about it. On July 26, 2023, on New Heights, the podcast he hosts with his brother Jason, he told the whole story. Exactly as it happened. The bracelets. The phone number. The elevator woman. The dressing room plan. The failure of the plan. The disappointment. All of it. On air. For millions of people to hear. He said he was disappointed that she doesn't talk before or after shows. He explained exactly why. She has to protect her voice. He was generous in the explanation, giving her full credit for the commitment that prevented him from reaching her. And then he just told the world that he had been, but hurt about it. This was, as Taylor Swift would later describe it in the most perfect way possible, metal as hell. Not smooth. Not calculated. Not the kind of thing a publicist would advise. Metal. Brave in the most unglamorous, human, sincere way. A man deciding that honesty about wanting something was more important than looking like he had everything under control. TaylorSwift heard the podcast. She heard it and she described her reaction to the world when she finally talked about the beginning of their relationship, and she said that what Travis did was a wild romantic gesture. She said it was like something she had been writing songs about wanting to happen since she was a teenager.
A wild, romantic gesture. Not a perfect one. Not a smooth one. A wild one. The kind that catches you off guard not because it was planned brilliantly but because it was done without a net. But here is the complication. Here is the part of the story that doesn't always get told clearly. Taylor Swift said on New Heights in August 2025 during her first ever podcast appearance that she is genuinely terrified to open her direct messages on social media. Genuinely terrified. Those are her words. This is a woman who cannot check her own inbox because of what exists in it, the sheer volume of it, the intensity of it, the impossibility of filtering the real from the overwhelming. So, if TravisKelce had tried to reach her the normal way that a famous person might try to reach another famous person in 2023, a DM, a message through a mutual, a note sent through industry channels, there is a good chance it would have been lost. Unread. Buried. The way Travis reached her was by going on a podcast and saying, essentially out loud for everyone to hear, I want to date this woman. I'm telling you because I couldn't tell her. I failed at the normal path, and I'm taking the completely abnormal one. And she heard it. She also revealed, on that same New Heights podcast episode, something that makes Travis's original plan even funnier in retrospect. He hadn't even tried to reach her management. He had no formal, professional requests submitted anywhere. He thought because he knew the elevator woman, he could just figure it out. He was, as Taylor put it, like, I know a guy. I can figure this out. She told this story with obvious affection, with the warmth of someone who has had 2 years to find it funny rather than baffling. The man who thought the elevator connection was enough. The man who had done no advance work, no coordination, no outreach, and believed in his plan completely until the moment it didn't work. Taylor Swift, who runs the most logistically complex touring operation in the history of music, who plans every detail of every show months in advance, fell in love with a man who walked into her concert with a bracelet and knew a guy. That contrast is, honestly, everything. After the podcast, Travis talked about what he did next. He said he threw it out there, that he threw the ball in her court. He invited her to a Chiefs game through the channels that actually worked, people who knew people on both sides, mutual connections, the kind of facilitated introduction that happens at a certain level of fame and requires actual coordination. Andy Reid, the Chiefs head coach, was friends with Scott Swift, Taylor's father, and helped create the connection. It was through real people, real conversations, real coordination. And somewhere in there, at some point that has never been precisely timestamped, there was a first phone call. Taylor has not given the exact date. Travis has not described the specific moment. What they have described, separately and together, is how it felt in that first period of communication, before the public knew anything, before the first game at Arrowhead, before any cameras caught them together. Travis said on New Heights in August 2025 about the early days of the relationship, the last thing I wanted to do was screw this up. So, her being so calm, cool, and collected and so real and understanding about everything that's going on really made me grow up real fast. The last thing he wanted to do was screw this up. And she was so calm that she made him grow up fast. That is the dynamic of the first conversations. His nervousness, her groundedness, the way that her calm about everything, the fame, the attention, the public life, the weight of being who she is created a kind of safety for him to figure out who he was in relation to her. There were rumors that they had been seeing each other before the September 2023 game at Arrowhead. Taylor confirmed this on New Heights. She said, there were rumors that we had been seeing each other, but I think people were like, what would they talk about? Fair. And then she laughed. Because the question of what would they talk about had clearly been answered during those weeks of getting to know each other before anyone knew they were getting to know each other. What would they talk about? That question would be answered more fully in one of the most perfectly constructed moments in the history of relationship documentation, by a phone call captured in Taylor Swift's Disney Plus documentary series, The End of an Era. The documentary series premiered on December 12, 2025. 6 episodes. The entire span of the Eras tour, or at least the emotional arc of it. The backstage reality of what it meant to perform 149 shows in pursuit of the highest-grossing concert tour in human history. And Taylor put Travis in it. Not as an appearance in the crowd or a cameo at a show. As a voice on the phone. Because that is how this relationship largely existed during the Eras tour, over phone. Travis was playing in the NFL. Taylor was performing concerts on multiple continents. The distance was not incidental to the relationship. It was the relationship's condition. And the phone was how they bridged it. Episode 1. Taylor is backstage before a show at Wembley Stadium in London, August 2024. She is dealing with something serious. Just days earlier, 3 shows in Vienna, Austria, had been cancelled after police uncovered a plot to attack one of her concerts. Authorities found bomb-making materials, machetes, a planned attack on a stadium full of people who came to hear her sing. The Vienna terror plot had shaken her in a way she describes in the documentary. With raw honesty, we've had a series of very violent, scary things happen to the tour. We dodged, like a massacre situation. And so, I've just been kind of all over the place. She was also processing the Southport attack in England, 3 children killed at a Taylor Swift-themed dance class. She is visibly emotional in the documentary talking about it. I have a hard time explaining it, she says through tears. And then she is backstage, in a car, preparing to perform. She is rehearsing Ed Sheeran's surprise guest appearance, just a few minutes of run-through before they go out and do it live in front of nearly 90,000 people. And her phone rings. She picks up and says, instantly, without hesitation, "Baby." TravisKelce on the other end of the line from wherever he is in America, too far away, busy with NFL training, unable to be at Wembley that night, starts talking the way he always talks. With energy, with warmth, with the uncomplicated affection of a man who is proud of the woman he loves. "How are you guys so good?" he asks her. "You just do a little in the backroom rehearsal, and then go do this live in front of everyone?" He is genuinely amazed. Not performing amazement. Actually amazed. TravisKelce, who has practiced the same plays thousands of times across decades of football, who knows better than almost anyone what it means to rehearse something until it lives in your body, he is genuinely impressed that Taylor and her team can add a surprise guest with a few minutes of backstage run-through and then go perform it in front of a full stadium without it showing. She loves him for that. You can hear it in her voice. And then he says something that makes the whole documentary stop for a second. "I want to be there, not I wish I could be there. Not I'm sorry I can't make it. I want to be there." Present tense. Active. Pained. The feeling of a person who is missing something specific at a specific moment and cannot get around the fact of the missing. And Taylor says, and this is the line that broke the internet when the documentary trailer dropped in November 2025, "Why do you have to be in the NFL?" Not a complaint. Not resentment. Just the pure, laughing exasperation of someone who has chosen a person with an enormous, inconvenient, non-negotiable life, and who is completely aware of the comedy of that choice. Why do you have to be in the NFL? Because of course he does. And, of course, she wishes he didn't, in that specific moment, even though she wouldn't change it. They talk about their jobs. And this is where the conversation becomes something else. Something that explains their whole relationship in about 45 seconds. Taylor says, "We basically have the same job." Travis agrees. He says, "You've got teammates, I've got teammates." And Taylor continues, "You've got Coach Reed, I've got my mom." Right there. In one small, playful exchange, Taylor Swift articulated something that nobody in the media had quite said clearly. These two people, who look from the outside like they are from completely different worlds, actually inhabit the exact same structural reality. Both of them perform for enormous audiences. Both of them depend on a team to make the performance possible. Both of them have a person above them, a coach, a mother, a creative authority, who guides the larger operation. Both of them spend enormous amounts of energy getting ready for a few hours of execution that the whole world watches and judges. Both of them know what it feels like for the individual moment to carry the weight of everything that came before it. The singer and the athlete. The English teacher and the gym teacher. Not opposites at all. The same job, different uniforms. Travis got that immediately. That's the thing about that exchange that matters most. Not just that Taylor said it, but that Travis agreed instantly and built on it. You've got teammates, I've got teammates. He understood the parallel not as a cute talking point, but as an actual truth he recognized. Because he has seen her work. He has been to her shows and watched what it takes to do what she does. He has seen the rehearsals and the set changes and the dancers and the vocal demands and the management of energy across a 3-hour performance. He got it. Immediately. Without her having to explain it. And then the call ends, and Travis says, "I love you so much, babe. Thank you for making my day better." And Taylor says, "I love you so much." Some people get a vitamin drip. I got this conversation. Some people get a vitamin drip. I got this conversation. A vitamin drip is what you get when your body needs emergency nutrition, when you need something to be poured directly into you, because you don't have time for the ordinary method, because whatever is coming requires you to be at full strength right now. Some people get a vitamin drip. She got a phone call, and the phone call did the same thing. That is what he is to her. Not entertainment, not comfort. A functional restoration of something that had been depleted. His voice on the phone, his energy, his genuine amazement at what she does, his, "I want to be there," that refills her. That gets her ready for 90,000 people. The world heard that line and completely came apart at the seams. It trended everywhere. People called it the most romantic thing said between two people in 2025. Taylor Swift, the woman who has spent her career finding exactly the right words for exactly the right feelings, reduced to a completely unplanned, completely real expression of how much a phone call from her boyfriend means to her. Some people get a vitamin drip. I got this conversation. But the documentary doesn't stop there. Because immediately after the show, immediately from her car before she does anything else, she calls him again. He picks up. And she says, "It went so great. I'm so happy. I'm so relieved. Baby, it's like the crowd knew that I needed a pick-me-up." She had been carrying the weight of Vienna and Southport and the fear and the emotional turbulence of the last 2 weeks of the tour into that Wembley show. And the crowd, 90,000 people who had no idea what she'd been going through, they showed up for her. And she called him to tell him. She joked in that post-show call, "I was so happy, I thought I was going to forget how to play guitar and sing." Which is such a specific, true, lovely thing to say. The happiness that is so large it becomes its own threat. She was so relieved and so grateful, and so full of it that for a moment the mechanics of the thing, play guitar, sing words, felt like they might escape her. She called him from the car to tell him, as the first thing, before anything else. Now. On New Heights, in August 2025, Taylor talked about what the relationship looked like during the tour. About the long-distance reality of it. About what it meant to love someone across oceans and time zones and wildly different professional schedules. And she said something that she described as a real shift from every previous relationship she had been in. She said, "There's been this dynamic shift with Travis. I've realized with this person in my life that was the right fit for me, you can have the two passions coexist, and they actually fuel each other. Ultimately, we love cheering each other on. Two passions coexisting and fueling each other." Every serious relationship Taylor Swift had before TravisKelce was marked, at least from the outside, by the tension between her career and her personal life. The toll that fame took on intimacy. The way that her public life consumed space that might otherwise belong to something private. And with Travis, something different happened. Her career and her relationship didn't compete with each other. They fed each other. Watching him play football made her want to be better at her job. His genuine amazement at what she does reminded her why she does it. His letter at the end of the tour, the one she read aloud in the documentary's final episode, said it directly in his own words. Because the last episode of the documentary ended with something extraordinary. Taylor reading a letter Travis had written to her. A letter he sent with white roses to her dressing room before her final Eras tour show, a show he couldn't attend because he had a Chiefs game that day. She read it aloud. Part of it. Not all of it, because some things you keep, but part of it. He wrote, "So many unbelievable memories on this tour, but my favorite one is seeing you in concert for the first time and being mesmerized and swept off my feet by a woman who doesn't even know me. A woman who doesn't even know me." His favorite memory of the entire Eras tour is the night in July 2023 when he was nobody to her. When he was just a guy in the crowd who had bracelets she never received and a plan that didn't work. When she didn't know he existed. That is the favorite memory. The before. And then he wrote, "Selfishly, I say thank you for creating this legendary tour and to Robert for making you stop through Kansas City, Missouri. That night in KC was the beginning of me meeting the love of my life." He thanks her tour manager by name, Robert Allen, the man who scheduled the Kansas City stop on the Eras tour. Because without that routing decision, TravisKelce is never at Arrowhead Stadium in July 2023. He never makes the bracelets. He never tries to get backstage. He never goes on the podcast and says what he said. And all of it, the relationship, the games, the Wembley stage entrance, the proposal in a Kansas garden, the wedding at Madison Square Garden, the gold books and the Dior gowns and the Justin T. married lights in the rain. None of it exists. It exists because someone routed a concert tour through Kansas City. Taylor Swift read that letter and then told her mother about it. Andrea Swift said simply, as she has said at multiple points in the documentary, "TravisKelce brings a lot of happiness." TravisKelce brings a lot of happiness. The simplest possible sentence. The verdict from the person who has known Taylor the longest and loved her the most consistently and only ever wanted that one specific thing for her. Now, let's talk about what Taylor said about Travis on New Heights. Because when she described him on that podcast, on his podcast with him sitting right there, she used a phrase that made Jason Kelce tear up. That made the entire internet stop. She called TravisKelce a human exclamation point. And she explained it. She said, "When you take a picture on your phone and you push the enhance color button, that's what you do to everyone's life. The enhance button. The one that doesn't change the photo, but makes everything in it more vivid, more saturated, more itself. He doesn't alter the people around him. He amplifies them. He makes them more of what they already are. He pushes the color up." And she said, "I use so many more exclamation points now." Which is, if you understand how much Taylor Swift thinks about language, if you know that she has spent her career choosing words with extraordinary precision, if you know that an exclamation point is a specific claim about emphasis and energy and the decision to end something with enthusiasm rather than a period, that sentence is remarkable. She uses more exclamation points because of him. Her actual punctuation has changed. The energy that arrives in her sentences has increased because he is in her life. That is what he did to her. That is what started with a friendship bracelet and a podcast and a first phone call that the world was not there to hear. She also told the story on New Heights of how the early part of the relationship unfolded. She said there were rumors they were seeing each other, and people wondered what they would even talk about. And she found that funny, because by the time those rumors existed, they had already been talking about everything. In the way that you talk to someone who has pushed your color up, who makes you use more exclamation points, who explains football as violent chess on your first date. Wait. Violent chess. She revealed this in the documentary's 4th episode. She admitted that before Travis, she had been very non-athlete in her romantic life, mostly because she couldn't figure out the overlap. She wasn't an athlete. What would they talk about? And then on their first date, Travis explained football to her. He described it as violent chess, which kind of helped me to understand it. Like high-speed, angry chess. Violent chess. High-speed, angry chess. That is how a man who has played the game his whole life described the thing he loves to the woman he was trying to impress. Not a dumbed-down explanation. Not a patronizing walkthrough. A creative, funny, specific frame that took something complex and made it immediate. Like violent chess. You don't need to know football rules to understand violent chess. You get it. Immediately. She got it immediately. And that is the first date. And the first phone calls. And the baby before a Wembley show. And the vitamin drip. And the white roses and the letter. And the entire extraordinary love story that begins with a man failing at an elevator and ends with purple lights and a woman saying yes in a Kansas garden. Actually, it doesn't end there. It keeps going. It always was going to keep going. Because here is what Taylor said, also on New Heights, also with him sitting right there, about what it felt like to be in this relationship during the biggest professional period of her life. She said, "This is sort of what I've been writing songs about wanting to happen to me since I was a teenager." Since she was a teenager.
She has been writing about this.
She has been building toward this. The songs about love that she wrote at 14 and 15 and 16 and 22 and 29, those were not just songs about the experiences she had. They were songs about the experiences she was waiting to have. The wild romantic gesture. The man who made his feelings known in the most embarrassingly public, bracelet-wielding, podcast-confessing way possible. The relationship where the two passions coexist and fuel each other. The first date where football was explained as violent chess, and she was never not a fan again. She was writing about wanting this to happen. And then it happened. And somewhere in the sequence of it happening, somewhere between the podcast and the game at Arrowhead and the first date and the Wembley concerts and the Vienna cancellations and the letter with white roses and the garden in Leawood and the gold books at Madison Square Garden, there was a first phone call. The world wasn't there for it. Taylor didn't document it. Travis hasn't described the exact moment. But you know what it sounded like if you've been paying attention? It sounded like, baby. One word. Instant.
Without thinking about it.
The way you answer for someone you've already decided everything about.
And it changed everything.
Stay with us. Because this story has more chapters than anyone counted. Let me slow down for a moment and go somewhere this story usually rushes past. The very early part. The weeks between the podcast and the first Chiefs game that Taylor attended. Because those weeks are the mystery at the center of the whole love story, and Taylor has given us more clues than people realize. She said on New Heights, "We started hanging out right after that." Right after the podcast. Not after the first game. After the podcast. Before any cameras caught them together. Before any tabloid confirmed anything. Before the world had any idea. They were hanging out. Now what does hanging out look like when you are Taylor Swift and TravisKelce? It doesn't look like a coffee shop. It doesn't look like a casual walk in the neighborhood. It looks like private spaces, coordinated arrivals, trusted people making sure that whatever is happening has room to happen without it being observed and reported and theorized about before it even has a chance to become anything. And in those early weeks, there was phone time. There had to be. Two enormously busy people in different cities, one of them in the middle of the most ambitious tour ever mounted, getting to know each other the way people have always gotten to know each other across distance. By talking. Travis said in a GQ interview around this time that the relationship happened very organically, even though from a media standpoint it was being tracked. He said, "Whenever I'm with her, it feels like we're just regular people. When there is not a camera on us, we're just two people that are in love. Two people that are in love. That is the reality underneath the tracking. That is what the first phone calls were made of. And what makes those first conversations so interesting? What makes the story of the first call so compelling, even though we don't have the tape of it, even though we don't know the date or the exact words, is what we know about who both of them were at that moment." Taylor Swift had just come off years of protecting her personal life with almost military precision. Her previous significant relationship with actor Joe Alwyn had lasted 6 years, and the world had barely seen it. Almost nothing leaked. Almost nothing was confirmed. She had engineered near-total privacy for 6 years. And then she came out the other side of that relationship, and here was this man on a podcast saying, "I know a guy," and making friendship bracelets and being but hurt about a missed elevator connection. That is the person she was talking to on the phone in the summer of 2023. A man who was constitutionally incapable of hiding what he wanted. Who had just demonstrated, in the most public way possible, that he was not going to be subtle about his feelings. That if he liked you, you were going to know. For someone who had spent 6 years in a relationship that was defined by privacy, who had protected her personal life by making it essentially invisible, the experience of being liked by TravisKelce must have felt like standing next to a very warm, very bright light.
You can see that in what she said about him.
The human exclamation point. The enhance button. The thing he does to everyone's life. amplifying, brightening, making more vivid what's already there. That is a woman describing the experience of warmth after cold, of visibility after invisibility, of a person who makes you more yourself, more colored in, more present. And it started on the phone. Now let me tell you about what those conversations revealed about each of them. Because the documentary, The End of an Era, gives us a window into how they sound together, and that window is remarkable. TravisKelce on the phone with Taylor Swift is not the TravisKelce of the football field or the podcast studio. He's simpler, warmer, more curious. The first thing out of his mouth in the Wembley call is a genuine question driven by genuine wonder. How are you guys so good? He is not performing for her. He is not trying to impress her. He is just genuinely amazed. He has seen what she does. He has been to shows. He has watched 90,000 people respond to her. And he still cannot fully comprehend the mechanism of it. He asks the question the way a person asks when they actually want to know the answer, not when they're making conversation. And Taylor Swift in return, she is specific with him. She is not giving him the press-ready version of her experience. She is telling him the truth. She is telling him she is scared and relieved and grateful. She is telling him the crowd knew she needed a pick-me-up. She is telling him she was so happy she thought she might forget how to play guitar and sing. This is not how Taylor Swift talks to the world. This is how Taylor Swift talks to someone she trusts completely. And trust with her was not a given. She had been careful with it for years. She had learned, the hard way, through very public experiences, what happens when the wrong people have access to her real self. She had spent decades managing the distance between the public Taylor and the private Taylor, and she had gotten very good at keeping most people on the public side of that line. TravisKelce got through the line. The question is how. And the answer is in what she said on New Heights. Her being so calm, cool and collected and so real and understanding about everything that's going on really made me grow up real fast. Wait, that was Travis's quote, but it works both ways. Taylor's calm was a gift to him. And his realness, his inability to be anything other than what he is, was a gift to her. He didn't need managing. He didn't need a curated version of her. He was exactly himself on a podcast when he told the world he wanted to date her. That is a man who has no hidden agenda, who doesn't run calculations about what version of himself serves him best in a given situation. What you get on the podcast is what you get on the phone. And for someone who had spent years trying to figure out what was real and what was performance in the people close to her, that must have been extraordinary. She said in the documentary's 4th episode that she'd been very non-athlete in her romantic life before Travis, not because she had anything against athletes specifically, but because she genuinely couldn't imagine the overlap. I'm not one, she said, so I've been like, well, what would we talk about? But then she went on a first date with him. And he explained football as violent chess. Let's sit with that for a moment. Because the violent chess explanation is, in miniature, everything you need to know about why TravisKelce and Taylor Swift work. Football is an enormously complex sport. It has hundreds of different plays, dozens of different defensive schemes, rules that even longtime fans don't fully understand, and a pace of action that requires simultaneously tracking multiple moving pieces at once. People spend years learning it. Coaches spend careers mastering it. It is not simple. And TravisKelce explained it to Taylor Swift as violent chess. In a sentence. A sentence that used something she already understood. Chess, strategy, the competition of two minds trying to outmaneuver each other, and added the one missing element, violence, physicality, the body as the piece being moved at high speed. Violent chess. High speed, angry chess. She got it. Immediately. And from there, she could learn. From there, watching a Chiefs game wasn't about waiting for the ball to move in a direction she vaguely understood. It was about watching a chess match happen at full speed, with enormous men as the pieces, and all the strategy lived in where those pieces moved. She became a football fan. A real one. Not performatively, not as a social obligation, not because cameras were on her in suites. She learned the game. She started recognizing plays. She cheered from the specificity of someone who knew what had just happened, not from the generality of someone who was happy when the crowd was happy. And she was in the documentary wearing Chiefs gear during rehearsal footage. Not game footage. Rehearsal footage. The private moments. She put on a Chiefs shirt because she wanted to, in a context where the only people watching were her team and a documentary crew. That is a fan. TravisKelce made her a football fan by explaining it as violent chess on their first date. And she made him a more thoughtful, more publicly settled person by being exactly who she was from the very beginning of their conversations. The documentary also shows something that has not been talked about enough. The moment at the end of the Eras tour. The final show. Taylor has just performed what is described as one of the most emotional performances of her career. The last night of the highest-grossing concert tour in history. The end of an era in the most literal possible sense. And waiting for her underneath the stage, in the belly of the venue, is TravisKelce.
He had a game that day.
He still came. He got there. He was waiting. And when he saw her coming down, he shouted, with the unedited, uncontained joy that is his signature, Tay. Not her full name. Not a carefully chosen moment.
Just her nickname.
The way you call someone you love when they walk into a room. Tay. Shouted in the underbelly of a massive arena at the end of the most significant professional achievement of her life by a man in a white shirt waiting for her with the same energy he brings to a fourth-quarter comeback. She was in her blue Midnight's bodysuit from the final act. She came off the stage dolly and she kissed him, and they rode a dolly backstage together. That image. That ending. That is the full picture of what their phone calls built. Not a romance that existed on screens and in publications and in the carefully managed public appearances. A romance that existed in locker room level, uncurated, tay reality. The kind of love that shouts a nickname at the end of a world tour because it can't help it. TravisKelce wrote her a letter before that last show. With white roses. Taylor read part of it in the documentary, and it is the best piece of writing TravisKelce has ever done. Or, at least the most meaningful. He wrote about his favorite memory of the whole tour being the July 2023 Kansas City show. The show where she didn't know who he was. Where he had bracelets with his phone number she never received. His favorite memory of the entire Eras tour, a tour that included him being on stage with her at Wembley in a Victorian tuxedo, that included him on the field after Super Bowl celebrations, that included being in the documentary that the whole world watched, is the night she was a stranger to him. And he wrote, "That night in KC was the beginning of me meeting the love of my life." The beginning. He called it the beginning. The failed evening, the butthurt feelings, the bracelets that didn't reach her. All of it is the beginning of meeting the love of his life. Which means everything after it, the podcast, the phone call, the first game, the first date with violent chess, the long-distance calls before Wembley shows, the baby, the vitamin drip, the garden in Kansas, the gold books, Madison Square Garden. All of it is chapters in a story that started before any of it was visible. Before any of it was public. Before any of it existed as anything other than a man at a concert, a bracelet in his hands, and a certainty that he had just watched something extraordinary. That certainty is what made him go on the podcast. And the podcast is what made her listen. And the listening is what led to the first phone call. And the first phone call is what led to all of it. A bracelet that never reached her started everything. And she said yes to all of it. Some people get a vitamin drip. She got this story. And it isn't over. Stay close.